Hello and welcome to another episode of Fanatic, the first on our main feed. So if this is the first time you're joining us at Fanatic, welcome. On the show we've got Michael from Track of Words, who's been a regular on the Imperial Truth, to come on and discuss the Black Library Weekender and everything that went on there. We delve into initially, start with the heresy, and we delve into the news, as it were, and the releases, and go into the topics of the seminars that were taking place. We also discuss the organisation of the event as well, in particular in relation to the Heresy Weekender, as they're very comparable in that respect. And then we go off into some other topics that may or may not be of interest. I do hope you enjoy the episode. If you've got any feedback for us, send it in to greg@theimperialtruth.com, or questions or anything else, you can always contact Michael, and his contact details will be in the show notes. Or you can get him on Twitter at Track of Words, I believe. So, or you can easily look it up. Go and find his blog as well. You can contact him through that very simply. But that will do for the intro. What we'll do is we'll go, after a short bit of music, into the discussion with Michael, and we'll fade straight out from there, so there'll be no end of show close. Thank you for listening to Fanatic. And joining me for this special episode is Michael from Track of Words. How you doing, Michael?
I'm very well.
Good. So we're on our kind of annual Black Library Weekender. I mean, it's been back 2 years, so we can call it that. Yeah. Black Library Weekender kind of catch up, as it were. Lots of cool stuff going on. I wasn't able to make it this year properly, but obviously you were there, absorbing everything that was going on.
Doing my best.
Yeah, too right. And with the Heresy Weekender tickets going up on sale recently, and some issues, I think it's fair to say, around that, I think it's probably a good idea just to start with the fact that Black Library were running the event themselves again.
They were, yeah. And
it seemed from the outset to go as smooth as last year's.
Yeah, I mean, if not even a little bit smoother. I thought it was beautifully run, and from clean setup on the Friday with the guys and girls behind the counter, as usual, being happy to chat. It was efficient and organised in the morning. The sales stand opened at 8 a.m. There was which I was really surprised by, but they told us all that the night before. It was easy registration, straight into the sales. It was just a pleasure to be there, really, from an organisational perspective.
Excellent. And there didn't seem to be... So I think you've mentioned on your blog a handful of people, Nick Kime, Hannah, and Kate as being the main compares.
Yeah, I think Matt Renshaw was comparing the audio seminars, but I missed those. So Kate, Hannah and Nick, so all straight out of the editorial team, were there in all of the seminars I was in. And there's as you'll know from previous weekenders a few years ago, the seminars weren't always that well prepared, and there was sometimes a sense that neither the author nor the compere really knew what to talk about, so it was just over to audience questions. This year, same as last year, the compares all had like pages and pages of notes in their notebooks, clearly prepared with good questions and ways to keep the seminars moving. And it's just exactly what you want. That's how a good sort of author seminar and Q&A should go, in my opinion.
Yeah, and last year they had a few more people helping out. I seem to remember there were a couple more, but I think it's quite nice to have that 4 people really doing the thing. I think
it must be knackering. Like it's hard enough work just sitting there and listening, never mind having to participate. But I think having it within the BL team means that they can organise it as a group. And it just really I think it really shows that a lot of work goes into it.
Bearing in mind the rest of any event from GW is handled by the events team, I do find it quite interesting that it's still the Black Library team, and that's a good thing. we look at the Horus Heresy Weekender tickets and the information that was put out, and just from the pre-release of information and tickets, even there, the Black Library one was handled extremely well.
Yeah, I was thinking just the same thing. So I went back a day or two later and looked for Heresy ticket info. Okay, so have we got maybe I missed it. If we got the seminars listed and all that sort of thing, nothing, which is a shame. But yeah, like you said, with the Black Library one, when the tickets went on sale, we'd already been told at BL Live what month they would go on sale, and then we got a week's warning or something like that. And then the day they went on, it had a complete list of guests, complete seminar and signing schedule, loads of info on generally what's involved, what stuff's going to be there to buy, information on how to get to the venue, where to go for food, where to stay. Just so much information, which means that you buy your tickets and you instantly have information at your fingertips to start making decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, and as I say, you compare that with the Forge World Weekender, and I think there's a lot they can learn from the Black Library Weekender. And maybe, I suspect part of it is Forge World Weekender sells out quick.
Yeah.
So actually, do they need to? Because it's going to sell out? Well, maybe they don't need to, but I still think they should.
I agree. I mean, it's interesting. There was a mix of people at the Black Library Weekender. So I think there were certainly people who didn't work at Black Library involved in it. I suspect some of the events team were on hand working on it during the day or the weekend. But yeah, that information in advance, possibly it is a factor of, well, there's less need because we don't need to encourage people to go. But also, I can't speak for Forge World. What the sense I got from Black Library is that the team are so engaged in it because it's their event that they want to make it as good as it can be because it reflects on them. Yeah. Now, if it's Forge World, if staff at Forge World are running the Forge World events, I think that's a shame then because it feels like they're not doing that. Alternatively, if the information is being provided by another team who don't have that sense of ownership and that sense of sort of pride in your own work, I can sort of see why maybe the same standard wouldn't be adhered to.
Yeah, and that's. I just think it's not terrible or anything like that. It's just something I would like to see the Horus Heresy Weekender improve on. I still think they're a little bit behind where they used to be when we had the first Heresy Weekenders, and now Black Library have leapfrogged that old standard.
Yeah,
and the Horus Heresy Weekend has fallen back as well. So it would be nice to see. But it's a usual, anyone who's heard us talk about the Black Library Weekender or the Heresy Weekender before, it's the usual setup. It's in the Nottingham Belfry again.
Yep.
And seminar rooms and sales stands, and nothing looked, from the outside when I popped in on the Saturday night, nothing looked new.
I think the only thing that I noticed that was genuinely I didn't think I'd seen before was round the corner from the main seminar rooms. There's usually been an artist's room, which they had, but there was also one of the small rooms was essentially an audio sort of listening station where during the day there would just be a loop of excerpts from audio dramas that you could just pop in and sit down and have a listen to. So you walked in and there was essentially a leaflet that explained which ones were going to be played. So for anyone who's either just a big fan or wants to see what they were about, I didn't go in much, but I imagine it was nice to just potter in and get a sense of what an audio drama is like that I hadn't really seen at previous events.
That's also a cool way of having like a little rest area that still keeps you involved with Black Library.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Bearing in mind that I suspect there's a half decent percentage of people there who are introverted. And so you need to recharge after being around a lot of people for a period of time. So that can almost work that way as well.
Yeah.
And the artist room's interesting because everyone ends up going to the artist room, but I don't know how much time people spend there.
Mm.
It's a tough one, I think, to get right. I think the same for the Forge World Weekender, to be fair.
Yeah. The Forge World one, because I am much more a reader than a gamer, there's usually more time for me to go explore the secondary aspects. So I'll tend to spend more time in the artist room. For the BL one this year, I didn't even go in once. I mean, I saw it was there, but I was so keen to go into all the seminars. I didn't go to any of the signings. I didn't go into the artist room. I chatted to Neil elsewhere, and I briefly met Johan Grenier. I'm probably saying his name really wrong. Who was really lovely, but I didn't pop in because there was so much that keeps my interest. So at the Heresy one, I suspect I'll go in more, and I quite enjoy going in, finding a time when there's no one there, and you can really sit down and have a chat with one of the artists.
Yeah,
because otherwise you just sort of potter in, have a quick flick through things, look at anything new, and then move on to something else.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. Although sometimes I struggle to talk about anything to do with the art, as I say, apart from I like that picture.
Yeah, so I usually just ask questions about it, like, how did you do this? And I'm sure I come across like a absolute idiot, but I'm eternally interested in people being able to do things that I can't.
Yeah, magic. It's all magic. And packed with the devil.
Yeah, completely.
Awesome. So let's talk about some of the Heresy stuff we had going on. First off, we had some releases there. We should probably talk. So Titan Death was pre-released there.
Yep.
I've been putting the smallest snippets on about the new Titan kind of information we've got, which if anyone's worried, they're really not spoilers. I mean, they're not spoilers to the point of even once you've read the book, you could almost blink and miss them. But we had the Ruined Storm, what do you call it, Dreadwing. We had Spear of Ultramar.
Oh yeah, Spear of Ultramar.
Spear of Ultramar, yeah. And we had a load of CDs as well, all pre-released. It was quite a good chunk.
I think quite a good chunk. You've also the new Visions of Heresy.
Yeah.
So Visions, Titan Death, those two novellas, which for £3 each is an absolute bargain. I'm looking forward to reading those. So one by David Annandale, one by David Geimer. The main two Heresy CDs were Hubris of Monarchia, I think it's called, by Andy Smiley. So that's pre-Calth, Ultramarines fighting orcs, sort of desperate to just finish off and get to the Grand Muster at Calth, obviously blithely unaware of what's going on. And then there was Night Fane by Nick Kime. So that's the next in the Aenid Thiel sort of mini-series. So I think it started with Censure, the first audio drama with him. And there's a short one called Stratagem, Red Marked, and now Night Fane. So those two are brand new. There was also the Horus Heresy audio drama collection, Volume 1, I think it was called, which is a slightly strange release that has, I think, 6 or 7 seemingly arbitrarily chosen audios from across the sort of time scale of the Heresy, just in one box set, which is brilliant if you've not got them yet.
Yeah.
Perhaps a slightly strange choice of collecting of them, but cool. Hopefully there'll be more of those.
Yeah, I mean, they might just be looking at it as just a bit of an example of different stuff to kind of, you bought this, you want to finish off these stories, you want to drag you into these characters. I can understand that. Trying to make money at the end of the day.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think those were all of the purely Heresy releases. There was also 2 Heresy short stories in the Events Anthology.
Was it 2? Awesome. I haven't got around to reading that yet. So.
Yeah, so a Sigismund short story by John French.
Cool.
And an Erebus short story by Chris Wright, which is particularly interesting because it's first person, so it's told by Erebus to you or to someone. And it's a very interesting tone of voice, and he is entirely unrepentant. There's no sense of, listen to my story and you'll understand, why I changed or why I fell. The way he sees it, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, and he's evil as we would see it from the off. So it's very interesting.
Awesome. Yeah.
And that is only going to be available at Warhammer World and at events. But I'm sure those stories, give it a year, they'll probably all be, or at least some of them will be released elsewhere.
It doesn't make sense to limit your audience forever.
No.
So yeah, that's cool. So there was some good stuff to purchase, as you know, is a small part of the appeal of the event.
For sure.
You can jump on things like that. We also had obviously seminars around what was going on.
Yeah.
Titan Death by Guy. So they often have a seminar about the book that's come out then. Which, you know, people will have a different level of value for. One thing is you get to read the author reading it, which actually I felt for Wolfbane was actually really good.
Yeah, I agree.
It gives you an insight it almost gives you an insight into what the characters, what the author's thinking when he's writing that first chapter. So it's amazing how the little inflection that he might put on a word that you would, or on a word in a sentence and you'd put it on a different word, can kind of give you an appreciation of what he's trying to say.
Yeah, for sure.
So how was Guy in there?
Well, Guy's a total pro. I mean, an absolute pro. I agreed with Wolfsbane last year. Was fantastic. Titan Death, not so many opportunities for good accents.
Yeah, true.
Because Guy does a good Lehman Russ accent. It was fascinating. So he started off, in fact, before he even did a reading, he essentially started off with a lecture on Beta Garmin. Right. So he talked us through the history of the system and the way in the real world, it sort of developed from, in its first reference, it was just a world, and then it's grown in the sort of depiction to be this system and you know, its sort of strategic importance to the war going on. So he gave us a sort of potted history of that, which was really interesting, and then talked us through the main two Titan legions who are fighting in Titan Death, along with some exclusive Forge World artwork of Titans in those colour schemes. Colour schemes is probably the wrong word. Livery? I don't know what you call it for a Titan Legion.
Yeah.
So that's Legio Solaris on the Loyalist side and Legio Vulpa on the Traitor side, which was really interesting. And it's clear how much sort of research he's done into this, how closely he's worked with Forge World in the development of this, which I'm sure is going to tie into Adeptus Titanicus somehow. Yeah,
this might be as well. This might be one of the... There's only a couple... Basically, Forge World have been catching up with Black Library. Yeah. And then Forge World realised at some point, like, we're always catching up with Black Library, and the way you write a novel about a war will often make it harder to write a historical document about the war, which is essentially what the black books are, even though they're skewed. And it's much better to have that information for the novelist to work off. And Beta Garmin will be one of the real first proper full-on where I suspect most of Beta Garmin was laid out whilst Guy was looking.
Yeah, I think that's certainly. I got a sense that he'd worked very closely with the Forge World team, and it was a collaborative process. So I suspect it was very much a sort of give and take, and they did it at the same time.
Yeah,
which is really cool. But like I said, Guy's a pro, so he just has this way with the room. He's a very good public speaker. All that stuff came across really interestingly. So I think everyone was really revved up by the time he got to a reading. And he actually gave a reading of a chapter very near the beginning, which does not have Titans in it.
Right.
I know you've read it, so you'll... essentially the first chapter after the foreword.
Sure, yeah.
And it's really characterful, and it introduces an important character for the story. I don't want to spoil anything for everyone who's going to read it, so I won't say anything more. But his reading was really good. It's the sort of thing where you can just sit back and enjoy and get a sense of the sort of feel he's going to have for the book. And having read the book, I thought it covered that very well.
Yeah. Should we talk about the Legio Solaris and the decisions with that?
Yeah, let's touch on that.
Did he mention... So, Legio Solaris, at this point in the heresy, are an all-female Legio. Should I say not Legion? Legio. Did he talk about that much?
He did a little bit. I think he was careful of not spoiling things, as I will try to be as well. But he did talk about how there have been a lot of the female characters in the heresy tend to have a specific role, as in there's all these Space Marines. You just can't have female Space Marines, whether people want them or not. at the moment, we can't have them. So how do I crowbar in a female character? Oh, I'll make her a ship mistress. And there are quite a lot of female ship mistresses in the Heresy. And so I think I got the sense that Guy sort of went, well, wouldn't it be fun to have more female characters in this book? Or why don't I make the entire Legio female? So the sense, and I may have got this wrong, but the sense I got was that it was a decision, a sort of a narrative decision, really, to make it work and fit with the story. And then it allowed the story to focus in a personal sense on a princeps from each of the two Legios having history, shall we say. So a woman from Legio Solaria and a man from Legio Vulpa. And I thought that was tied in really nicely in the plot. But I don't know how much careful in-universe plotting went along with that beyond let's have a nice balance because otherwise it's going to be a sausage fest again.
I don't think there needs to be any. I think it was handled very well. Now, so it's always a tricky subject because there are people who will say, it's being forced in and everything else, and that can happen. That without a shadow of a doubt, you can read and sometimes think, hold on, what's going on? It doesn't flow right, as it were. Not to say that people shouldn't be trying to do that. But as I say, we've got this weird instance with 40k where gender the Imperium does not care about gender.
No.
Right, period. However, 18 legions have to be male. So there is that weird kind of sense of what's going on there. And what I actually think what Guy managed to do within that book was super smooth. Really super smooth. And I don't want to go into it too much, but it was really interesting reading it to notice the little things that made it. And they didn't. It's not like they jumped out the page. I just kind of realised as I was going through the little things that made it flow and not jump out the page were really well handled.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what he also did was in one or two places really nicely touch on the in-world perception that some people might have of, whoa, hang on a minute, entire Legio all made of women, what's going on there? Because he had a character in universe react like that, and then other characters reacting in different ways. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's not something that is likely to bring anyone out of the story, but sit and think about it, and it's all going to make sense, and it all ties in really nicely.
Yeah, no, it's really sweetly done, and yeah, I mean, you can only get so much talking about a seminar that's talking about a book that we're probably not going to talk about because it's not released yet. We got a December some point, and we got a date on that. I can't even remember.
There is a date. Yeah. I think I've got it in front of me.
But
Titan Death is due out on the 8th.
8th, yes. So for all you get the hardback or the ebooks, very worth reading. Very totally. Interesting.
Especially... go for it.
Well, I said to you after I finished it, it feels like it's been put in out of plan sequence to me personally. And it's very slight, but it was like, okay, cool. This book had to be... It was pushed into the timeline of getting books out, and there was just the smallest hint in the way I read it that felt like that. But that doesn't diminish from the fact the book is fun and good.
Completely agree. And Guy, as much as said that in the seminar, for a long time there was no plan to write a book specifically about Beta Garmin. A decision was made. I think they recognise at BL that in an ideal world it would have come out before Slaves to Darkness.
Yeah.
You could probably read them either way around, but arguably it would be better to read this before Slave to Darkness. I got that sense as well.
And I think reading Slaves of Darkness first makes that so, because you would actually, just talking now, you would expect more ties, direct ties between the two books. And that, I say, it's a small thing at the end of the day, because there are certainly worse books in the series, by a margin.
Oh, for sure.
Death. So
at the moment, before I've written my review, my sort of general feeling on it is it's a really excellent book. If you are looking for something which goes into the top level detail of the Beta Garmin campaign, probably not the one for you. It's about Titans fighting in Beta Garmin rather than the sort of conflict itself. But what it does is offer a really balanced novel that throws in every type of Titan conflict you can imagine. You know, there's knights fighting on the outside of a spaceship. Like, what's not to love about that? But also, despite many battles, and massive battles, because Titans are scarily huge, it's very personal and it's very character led. So it's a great, almost, dare I say it, standalone heresy novel. Yeah,
you definitely could. It could be standalone. You don't lose a huge amount by doing that. No. You get the story. Even the Primarchs that are in it, they're side characters.
Yep.
But it still does the job it needs to do pre-Terror as well. So there's lots of things going on in it. You did well.
Yeah, I agree.
Groovy. And then I suppose the next kind of big one we had was the Solar War. So moving into the Siege of Terror.
Yeah, which I think a lot of people were really looking forward to because, oh my God, it's the Siege of Terror. Like it's almost here. So this was with John French specifically talking about his novel, The Solar War, book 1 of 8. In the Siege of Terror. 1 of 8.
So you probably heard, but Siege book 1 of 8. So the Siege of Terror will be concise.
Although
in 8 books with extras.
Yeah, so 8 hardback novels. So 8 full-length novels with there will, I think it will, possibly may, I can't remember quite how it was said. If I got it written down here. Yeah, I think I wrote down that there will be the occasional hardback novella as well.
Sure.
So read into that what you will, but 8 main range novels to cover the Siege from start to finish, which take us to 62 in total.
Yeah, that's a decent amount, isn't it?
It is.
And I think fits more into, because in 8 books they've got to do the siege from literally from the point of fall, the Death Guard fall, to Horus versus the Emperor. And we've got Luna, and we've got I don't know exactly what stories they're going to tell, but you suspect that. Well, we know that we're not going to get everything tied up. Not every person's story is going to be tied up in those 8 books. And with the fact there's 8, I think it lends credence to the fact that we will might be a bit of a break, but we're going to get more Horus Heresy era stories.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you could probably write a 30-book series on the events of the siege if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
But they have to strike a balance. And in my opinion, and this won't chime with everyone, some of the best Black Library books are the ones which skip quickly from big event to big event rather than getting bogged down in the minutiae. Now, sometimes it's great to see the grand sweep of what's going on, but sometimes you want something that's shorter that just gets to the point. And so 8 books is still quite a lot. That's still damn near 3 trilogies. And if you imagine 3 epic sci-fi trilogies, like that's going to take you a long time to read.
Yeah.
So there's still plenty of books in there, short stories, novellas, all that sort of stuff. I think we'll have plenty of the siege over the next few years, between next year and 2022, which is when it's due to finish. But as you say, I just can't see the Heresy stopping as a series. Not so much as a series, as a setting.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they just keep writing about it? You can write stories about Necromunda and Blood Bowl. Like, the heresy is the heresy. Everyone loves it. Yeah. It's just financially, commercially, it's a license to print money.
If only it's a shame this is the first kind of series of this that I know of, series of this type that's gone big, that's had multiple authors, everything else. Because I think if Black Library was to start the heresy now, what you might have is like 4 or 5 kind of chapters with 6 to 8 books in each kind of thing. I think they like, it's a limited number, so when you get in and you know beforehand exactly how many you're getting. So even one of my friends who's purchased every book, he's a massive Heresy fan, he's like, I'm about 5 books, 6 books behind, maybe more, and I've lost interest.
Yeah.
And there's lots of people who've fallen by the wayside, and that's understandable, that's fair enough. And having this kind of definitive, there are 8 hardback novels that you can, that you're going to have to buy to read this whole thing, and a few other bits around it. Boom, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, and I suspect it's a response to those sort of questions that's informed the BL's decision to confirm this in advance. They didn't need to. They could have said, there's going to be more than 3 books, and you'll find out.
Yeah.
They've made a decision, and like you say, I think it's a good decision. They've also confirmed there's going to be limited edition hardbacks a little bit early for each one. So, for example, the Solar War is due in May, but in March it will get a limited edition release.
Right.
That limited edition will contain additional artwork, but no additional stories.
Sure. Did they say how many?
How many pieces of artwork?
No, how many limited edition?
Oh, each of the... Oh, as in...
Yeah, as in how many they print.
No.
Okay, fair enough.
No one asked it. I didn't think to. I would imagine recent ones have generally been like non-heresy stuff, anywhere between 1250 and 2000.
Yeah.
So I would have thought somewhere around that, but I'm speculating. But they did confirm people were asking about other formats. So I imagine it's going to be limited edition hardback, then standard hardback, I imagine.
Yeah.
But after that, the different paperbacks, that will be maintained. So they will come out in mass market paperback, like all the rest of the Heresy books have done, with the same sort of gaps between them. So on the community site, you can see the logo and everything. So it is very much the Horus Heresy subtext or subline, the Siege of Terror. They're going to look nice on a shelf. They're going to match. They might look a little bit special, but I think they will overall match. That was the impression I got. So all the questions, all the worries that people have been having, it's going to be another series. Is it going to look different? Is it going to come out in a different format? All that sort of stuff, I feel like were answered. And certainly in the Coming Soon seminar, Neil, the manager of Black Library, was asking us, does that answer your questions? Is that what you wanted to hear? Have you got other things you need?
Yeah.
So I really think they've been paying attention.
That's good.
And trying to please people, which is nice.
Weirdly, I think it's all going to fit on my shelf pretty perfectly as well, because
it's not on mine.
Those can go on a different shelf. I've already got the Primarch's novels on a separate shelf, and I think it's going to work quite well. Taking up essentially 4 shelves with the Heresy, the mainline, the 50, however many books we're going to have, 54 books, plus all the special editions and the CDs are all going to fit nicely on 2 shelves.
Oh, lovely.
Fingers crossed.
Speaking of the Primarchs, I think because there's going to be plenty coming for the Siege, it was mentioned that the release of the Primarchs might slow down a little bit.
Right,
so
okay.
Don't necessarily assume that the one every 3 or 4 months that's been recently will continue. I think that's fair. There'll still be a lot. So those 8 books for the Siege... so the Buried Dagger, before the Siege, comes out in February. March we'll see limited edition of Solar War. May the actual release. So from early 2019, they said it was due to finish. The Siege was due to finish early 2022. So that's 8 books over 3 years, give or take, plus Primarchs. I think there's still going to be plenty of Heresy stuff.
Yeah, that's healthy. And the other thing is as well, we've already got 10 Primarchs novels out, and we've had 2 announced. So, Angron and Kurz are both...
Although Kurz wasn't officially announced. That came out a bit off the record, but yeah.
But essentially, we know that's coming at some point. So that's 12 books done. already. So actually, we're chugging away. We're 2/3 of the way through that once those two are out anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's going to be someone who's really disappointed if their Primarch's last. But that's life, isn't it? Unfortunately. So there's plenty of stuff going on. And how was John with again? John's great in the seminar format.
Yeah. So John sort of did two things. One of which is he gave a really in-depth sort of conversation and exploration of the research he did, the thinking that went behind how he was going to tackle some of the really tricky things around like the logistics of the siege in the first stages of the siege. So I'm assuming the Solar War, this is about the first stages when they reach the Sol system. So there's a lot of talk around why, like what are the gates? I can't remember what they're called now. So there's two like space gates that are the routes into the Sol system.
Yeah.
Why do you use those? Why not just attack from anywhere? And what are the traitors going to be doing? And I don't want to go into too much detail because I'll get it wrong.
Sure.
But it was really interesting. And the research he did, I think he said he spent a month. Where's my note? Yeah, he said he took him a month and a half of planning and prep to prepare and research all of that, like the logistics, who needs to be in it, like where do they come from? All these different characters. So almost of any of the BL authors, John has that in-depth knowledge that you just sort of really trust that he's going to have nailed that. So he did a really good job of explaining all of that, especially this idea that you've got those gates, which are the safe, the quick routes into a system, but chaos, the traitors have got chaos on their side, so they can send someone else. They can basically cheat and send someone in a different direction, a different route that the loyalists aren't expecting. So I think it's not just going to be a straight up grind. We'll see some strategic elements going on in there as well.
Yeah.
So that was very cool.
That's cool. And we know, well, from old lore, I haven't been able to sit and read through Visions of Heresy, the new one, to see if they've added anything in. But we know from old lore from various places, of different places, we had the fights. So Pluto, there was a fight for Pluto and Jupiter, and then of course Mars has to be dealt with, and Luna, and then Terra as well. And it'll be interesting to just see how that. Plus, there could be anything thrown at us, really. So we don't even know kind of how they're going to handle Terra, the final battles itself, which could be a series, as you say, could be a series just for the final assault on Terra from space and from the webway. So
yeah, totally. And there's going to be a seriously big cast. John said that for his novel, he used the word ridiculous cast list, and similar to Titan Death, he said Sanguinius is going to be an quote-unquote incidental character in the story. So Primarchs being incidental characters gives a hint of the sort of the scale of what's going on.
Yeah.
Apparently we're going to see a little bit of Chthonier, so what it was like for Abaddon, however you say it, before he was a Space Marine. So that's quite exciting.
You were right the first time, Abaddon.
I always say Abaddon, but then some people say Abaddon. So
yeah, it was one of Laurie's. He's never Abaddon. Because that would be a terrible joke. So but
that sounds really good. And then John, the other thing that John did really well, massive credit, is he gave 3 readings from different elements of the story, including one towards the end, which was towards the end of the seminar, not necessarily the end of the book,
sure.
Which was a fight scene, which basically that finished the seminar. And I turned around to my friends, and Howard basically couldn't speak. There was a little bit of a hush at the end of that seminar. People were just going, "Oh, this is good." So John again is very good at that. And those readings, I think I don't want to say too much. Very promising. I'm really looking forward to this book.
Cool. Yeah, and that's a little way out now from us. So it's almost one of those things I don't want to get too excited about it because we got a while to wait.
Yeah, because there's the Buried Dagger and Angron due in February.
Yeah.
And then the limited edition of Solar War the next month.
Yeah, it's going to be that money's going to keep pouring out, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Brilliant. And that was the main kind of heresy.
Yeah, I think there was certainly a seminar early on about presaging the Siege of Terror. So that was about the 2 novellas, but I didn't go to that one. There was the Art of the Heresy.
And you haven't read those 2 novellas yet, have you?
I haven't, not yet.
And I have. And what they do well is kind of sort of bookend those stories.
Okay.
To a point, obviously. There's obviously stories to come, but we know that they're kind of their action within the heresy is pretty much done from the old law as well. But the Dark Angel story sets up, gives you a lot of questions, as it should do, and with some kind of really interesting kind of new look on certain aspects of their culture and the secrets that we know they have in 40k. And Spear gives a bit of a drive to, like, Guilliman's in this position where we know from the end of Ruinstorm, we know generally that he's going to try and get to Terra at some point.
Yep.
And he's got this real kind of game to play to try and get everything right. He's got multiple jobs to do, and he's kind of got to be perfect to get it right. So it's a real pressure. I won't spoil anything of those for you, for anyone. But I quite enjoyed them. I've said before that both those Davids, unfortunately, are not always the easiest read for me.
Fair enough.
And one of the books I struggle with a little bit in terms of maintaining the flow of reading it, but I enjoyed what was written. But it just didn't flow.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to look forward to those, and I'm sure I'll get reviews of them up anon.
Yeah, indeed.
I think the last things heresy related that came out of the weekend that's worth talking about are this coming Saturday, the first 5 books, so that's up to Fulgrim, are being re-released in hardback as print on demand. So anyone who has been collecting the hardbacks and has not got them has 2 weeks to order those. And that is then kicking off a cycle that I think will take a number of years to cover everything, but will gradually go through all of the previous books in the main series, reprinting the hardbacks, I believe, in the same format, so that you can catch up. So I've got 3 gaps in my collection, for example, right. Which means rather than going on eBay and paying appalling prices, I've just been patient and hoping for this, and great, I'll be able to get them at, I'm assuming, £20 each. Perfect. And I think that is something that a lot of fans have been asking for. So again, it's a nice example of something that they've been listening to. Yeah,
and this maybe explains why they haven't done it before. They're kind of getting to a point where they're going to do this. I'm sure there are going to be people out there who are rather peeved, but they have been telling us it's something that they were going to kind of look to do.
Yeah, I think if you were sufficiently impatient that you really needed to get them, great, you've got them. Like, it's not the end of the world. But it is what it is. I think not re-releasing them fully is fine, because there's probably not that many people, relatively speaking, who want the hardback. So
absolutely,
a short window print on demand, I'm okay with.
It's one of those things. So as soon as they did the hardbacks, I started to collect from that point. Yeah. So it's cost me, I've bought those first few books twice in paperback and in hardback, but it cost me £20, £40 every so often. I think if they were to do it now, yes, you would get some people go and pick up the hardbacks, but realistically, knowing there's 50 odd books, how many people are going to do that, knowing they're going to spend over £1,000 on it? Yeah. So to do a full reprint, a run, and have those books out on the shelf, and how many people are seriously going to go, I've got them all in paperback, but I will go back and buy them all in hardback. I'm sure there are the odd person out there, but it's not enough to make it worthwhile.
No, I agree. And then I think the last thing that I've not covered is, so in February, there's going to be the Black Library celebration, which we had this year. I'm assuming this is now a yearly thing. And there's a load of cool stuff coming out, including for the Heresy, 2 new paperback editions of Horus Rising and False Gods.
Yes.
In a fairly moody black and gold only cover, which looks quite nice. And they include author afterwards, brand new author afterwards, and additional short stories. Now, I don't know if those are brand new or they're short stories from elsewhere in the series.
Can you imagine if they're brand new? I think that would be a mistake. Personally.
Well, we'll certainly see, won't they? So
no, as in if they did it, not that they, not they became. But we'll see. We'll have to wait and see.
But so that's the first 2, and I mean, my initial thought was, I don't really need another copy of them, but they do look quite nice. I quite like the idea that they're being released as part of this celebration. So even if you just get Horus Rising as, it's the first one, it's quite nice to have something almost as a souvenir.
Yeah.
So again, for full-on completists, it's a nice little extra, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a necessary purchase.
No. And that's and we're going to guess at the 23rd of February because that's also when Buried Dagger and Angron's released.
Yeah, and several other books. I think Buried Dagger, Angron, Honor Bound by Rachel Harrison.
Our Martyred Lady.
So there are plenty coming out alongside the Reader's Choice books that we all voted for. So that's Storm of Iron and City of the Damned. So there's going to be plenty of stuff to buy on that day. Of course, this year it was Lucas the Trickster and the Magos. Broadening it out next year with more releases and Heresy stuff as well. So I was mildly disappointed by the celebration this year. I didn't really think that very much was made of it. I'd like to see GW stores getting involved a bit more, maybe get some authors involved going and doing signings different places of the country.
Yeah.
Make a really big deal, because Black Library should be a more visible part of the business than I think sometimes it is. But it's nice to see the Heresy involved in it, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay, so moving on from the Heresy, we had, kind of one of the bigger things there was Spear of the Emperor.
Yep.
So ADB's new current timeline 40k novel.
Yeah.
Did you go to this seminar?
I did. The seminar was fantastic. Aaron is an incredibly interesting guy who I sometimes feel must find these events really tricky, because so many people want to talk to him, and so often he's put in this position like, no one's read this book and I'm being asked to talk about it. Like, that's tricky. It's also a brand new chapter. No one knows anything about the chapter. It's come out in this expensive, beautiful limited edition. There must have been a lot of pressure on him, a lot of weight on his shoulders. And I thought he did a really good job of going into the detail of like how he developed the character of the chapter, how they fit into his little sandbox, which is the Alara's Veil. So there's a collection of chapters who are tasked with looking over this particular part of space, and then Imperium Nihilus happens, and one chapter's dead, the other one's knackered, and hardly anyone left. And so the Emperor's Spears are there trying to juggle all these problems. He set it up really, really well, and it sounds really fascinating, but incredibly dark. I think he basically said, someone was asking him about, like, how do you, in a galaxy that's supposed to be all about horror, like everything is terrible, which is what 40k is, how do you make it worse for the Dark Imperium?
Sure.
And he basically said everything that could go wrong does go wrong. Literally everything. So, I mean, that sounds pretty dark. Like, this is a chapter who've got Primaris Marines, but they've not been reinforced like other people have. So they've not had a shipment of 1,000 new blokes come and help them out. They got the magic potion that would help them eventually make Primaris Marines. And then a ship came through with one guy from the Mentors. They're not very happy.
No.
So the seminar was fantastic. Aaron talked about things like the sort of the structure of the chapter and how the first company is really quite different to how normal's not the right word, how other chapters' first companies are, and the fact that they don't really speak because they're all latent psychers and they communicate telepathically. Like, that's cool.
Okay.
So anyone who is even a little bit psychic essentially gets rooted out of the mainline companies into the first company to form the Paragons. I think people are probably going to go mad for this book.
Well, they're already going mad for it, and it's not even, it's only just been released. I think that doesn't help with Aaron when he's in these circumstances. And in fact, he actually said to me while I was out there on the Saturday night talking to him, he's like, people don't want to listen to me talk about my books. It's dull. And I'm like, I know that's part of Aaron, but I'm like, dude, I mean, yeah, it couldn't be further from the truth. But and that's just the way Aaron is. And we know that, and
sure.
We have to appreciate that.
But he has so many interesting things to say, whether he realizes they're interesting or not. And this one was compared by Nick Kime, and I got a real sense that the two of them have a really good relationship. And Nick did a great job of encouraging Aaron and sort of pointing him to, and helping him figure out like what to talk about, how much he can say. So I think it was a really good seminar, and it made me go from do I want to spend £85 to damn it, I really want this book.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully there's a lot to read, so I can afford to wait. But it's one of those that morning it gets released, I'm going to be downloading the ebook.
The problem is, I say problem. So we haven't yet had a release date for it.
No,
fine.
True.
And as I understand, it will come out in limited edition hardback only first.
Yeah.
So there won't be an ebook to start off with, which means there'll be a 3 to 6 month wait because this is a limited edition, not special edition. At BL Live, they said 6 months. It's not been confirmed since. We'll see. Probably 3 to 6. So it's been talked about at the Weekender. So there's all this hype, even more than there was before. And then the only way to get it immediately is to spend £85 on it. Now, I will put my hand up as someone who has been critical of BL with special editions and limited editions. This limited edition is beautiful. I had a look at it on the Friday night, thinking, it's fine, I'm not going to be tempted. Damn it. It's really good. Like, the War Master, lots of nice things in there, didn't tempt me because I don't really want a book that looks like it's been printed by the Munitorum.
Yeah.
I don't need a blank notebook because I've got plenty of those. I don't need a flag or a cap pin. This one, the book itself, is beautiful, really nice. It comes with an Index Astartes as its own little book about the spears, which has essentially a sort of flip chart where you can peel back the layers of Space Marine armor and you can see like what all the different elements are and what they're called until you eventually peel back to see the Marine and his black carapace. Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
If you're a gamer, there's a transfer sheet, there's a chapter tactics card, there's some really nice art cards, and then even the little gubbins, the bits which aren't book related in any way, there's still a really nice, really well made sort of objective marker. There's a purity seal bookmark. Oh, it's actually as a over the top, ridiculously expensive box set, they've done a damn good job of it. So
yeah, absolutely.
People are going to be very tempted. I really hope, I have my fingers crossed, that BL will tell everyone when it's released how long they'll have to wait until the standard edition comes out.
Yeah, fingers
They
crossed.
haven't historically, but I feel like this is very expensive and a lot of people won't be able to afford it. So it would be a nice courtesy to the fans to explain how long they're going to have to wait.
I mean, the other thing is, I'm never going to do a Spears of the Emperor army. So I know that if someone else is going to do that and doesn't want to buy it, I can also sell on those bits. Not for huge amounts of money, maybe. But then again, how many transfers do you get on that sheet, I suppose? But if you want to do a character like some people do, they want to do. You often see it with the Night Lords from Aaron's books that they make the squad it'll be good for that.
Yeah, I don't imagine you could do a large army with those transfers. But it's a nice touch if you're a gamer. Yeah, so it was. I think it sold pretty well. There was number one was there, so a lot of people fixate over how low a number of the limited edition they get, and so someone went away. It might even have been Mark Anthony, who if you're a regular at these events, you'll know. I can't. Someone certainly got number one, which they'll be very pleased with.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another big name there with a big name of books, Anarch,
yes,
and Dan. Did you end up with that one?
I bought the book and I was at the seminar.
Cool.
Because Dan is always good value.
Yes.
For a seminar. You mentioned earlier seminars with an author talking about their book, and so sometimes I'm tempted not to go to those because I'm just going to read it anyway.
Yeah.
But certain authors, especially,
bring more value.
Yeah. And as Aaron does, as Guy does. A bit different for John because we can't read the book yet. But the other guys, like, you could just go and buy the book. But the three of these, you sort of feel like you're going to get something really interesting. And Dan, I mean, I was live tweeting through all of these seminars, and some of them I got more or less than others. Dan, I had loads of little quotes because he's just so interesting and has so many quotable lines. Like talking about the fact that the Gaunt's Ghost series is a soap opera with added death.
Yeah.
Which is completely true. Exactly what it is. I can't wait for Anarch. I think I'm going to have to reread at least the end of the War Master just to have it clear in my head. But he really sold it. I think he gave a really strong impression of finishing off the arc as a whole, but also his enthusiasm for Gaunts as a series. The idea that while this is the closure of the victory, and he said the longest Gaunt's Ghost book so far, it probably isn't going to be the last book we'll see of these characters. Whether that's a whole new arc of Gaunt's Ghosts, or whether that's a spin-off. And he did moot Thelma and Louise in space. We'll see if that actually happens. But he less jokingly did talk about the idea that there might be a couple of characters who sort of hive off from the main regiment because maybe their narrative arc, like what they were moving towards, is finished, is completed, they've achieved what they wanted, and now he can take them in a different direction.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that sounds really cool.
But he also talked about the possibility of being books to be written about things Gaunt did before the Ghosts. In context of the conversation around how it's gradually become clear during the series that Gaunt actually was quite an important figure in the Crusade before the fall of Slado, and essentially before he got quote unquote saddled with the Tanith. So plenty of stuff that might be interesting, not necessarily baby Gaunt, but just Gaunt between sort of getting his full commission and joining the Ghosts. So that could be quite interesting. And there was a ton of conversation as usual around characters, characters not being bulletproof and killing them off, about how Anarch is really a book about loyalty and family, but on both sides of the conflict. So I think we'll see a bit like we did in Blood Pact. We'll see some from the Chaos side of the conflict.
Sure. Okay. That's good. Yeah, I'm going to have to restart the Gaunt series and go through them all, I think.
They're just so good. I reread the first 4 and then skipped ahead and reread the last arc. So I wanted to read the first few ones to just really refamiliarize myself. And they're just so much fun, especially when you get to Necropolis, which is a magnificent book.
Excellent stuff. Do you want to? Was there anything else you really want to pick out from the Weekender?
Well, quite a lot of people have asked me what my favourite seminar was, and it's impossible to pick an actual favourite.
Sure.
A few highlights were listening to some of the newer authors. So I got to listen to Danny Ware and Mike Brooks, who've both written short stories and now novellas about Sisters of Battle and Necromunda characters and various things like that. And they were both just really interesting to hear new perspectives from. So definitely ones to watch. I think some really interesting stuff coming from those. Sadly, Brian Blessed couldn't make it because he was ill, so that was a shame. But it didn't. It sounds really bad. It didn't really affect it because ultimately we're there to talk about the books, and an actor not being there, while a shame, it's not the main focus of the event.
No.
So it wasn't the end of the world. Although it would have been cool to have heard him. But I think otherwise the other seminar that really stands out was a novellas one. So I was expecting, because it was called Warrior Queens in the Age of Sigmar. So in theory, it was going to be talking about David Annandale writing about Neferata, and then Darius Hinks and Nick Horth having written novellas in that new paperback series featuring female characters. But what it actually turned into was an hour-long conversation around representation of women and, to a certain extent, of the minorities in Black Library, compared by Kate Hamer, one of the editors, who addressed the elephant in the room right from the beginning, the fact that we're talking about women in Black Library and there were 3 male authors there on the panel. But it could have gone one of two ways. It could have got sort of combative, but it didn't. It was just a really productive, really interesting conversation with largely some great questions and great input from the audience around how to plan out and prepare and think about and write about characters who are not your gender, and the sort of things that, like the sort of traps you can fall into with that sort of thing, in context of BL as a whole, and then specifically these particular Age of Sigmar stories. And I think these are conversations which we should be having. Next year, I'd really love to have a similar panel with a mixture, an even mix, if possible, of male and female authors, and looking back at how it's changed over the preceding year. So that was quite a highlight, an unexpected one.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and I thought I saw on some of the, I can't remember whether it was through Black Library's website or somewhere else, there were a few more names and a couple of females.
Yeah, well, we've been having some new authors coming along via things like Inferno.
Yeah.
So obviously Danny Ware I mentioned before, Rachel Harrison, who's got her first BL novel coming out in February, which is called Honorbound, and the Severina Rain short stories have been amazing.
Yeah, I've only
so
read
I'm really
the one.
looking forward to that.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, damn good. Jane Fenn, who's an established sci-fi author, has written at least one for BL. I've probably missed some people, but yeah, earlier in the year, when a few of these authors were getting their first stories published, you'd see a little community post with a quick interview. On the header image, there were headshots of loads of the authors, and a few female faces on there who I don't recognise. So I imagine we'll have more to come. Certainly in Inferno 2, there's a new name that Jamie Crisali, I think, I may have pronounced the name wrong, who I've not read anything by before. So I hope, and I think we will, see a wider range of authors, and not just white guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good thing. I think so. The other thing with the Black Library, obviously, is Saturday Night Entertainment was more of what they have done. To be fair, I think it's one of those things that if you weren't there, you will never understand why I was crying and in pain with laughter. And that might not be to everyone's taste anyway, but good. Again, it's just all the same kind of good, organised. They basically did a reading from written specifically for this about Gotrek.
Yeah, an audience participation audio drama called Brew Slayer.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know that they did similar last year.
There was a Lucas the Trickster
one,
audio last year. He was scaled up a bit this year because there were 2 audience parts. And while one of them was not really to my liking, because it was a bit too silly, the guy playing Gotrek was wonderful, Stu, who is a friend from previous events, and is wonderful, and really acted out the part of Gotrek.
Yeah.
But basically, it was a drinking contest between Gotrek, a couple of dwarfs, and a dark elf, played very capably by Hannah Hughes, one of the editors, who is very sort of quiet, but came across brilliantly as a faintly evil dark elf assassin.
Yeah, it's one of those people you could easily mistake that they're quite timid.
Yeah.
Because quite quiet, and I don't think that's possibly true at all.
Well, perhaps not on the basis of...
on stage, it didn't come across that way in any way, shape or form, which is really cool.
But massive credit to them, to David for writing something specifically for this, to everyone who performed it, and Matt Renshaw who directed it. Matt's the audio producer, or one of them. It was great fun, especially the fact that all the actors and staff were dressed up.
Yeah.
Matt made a particularly fetching wizard. Hannah had lovely elf ears, and 2 fire slayers complete with axes. And Steve Conlon was pretty much falling off the stage in laughter.
Yeah.
With laughter. It was a great fun, but it wasn't just silliness, was it? It was actually good. And even before that, there was a raffle. So in previous years, there've been some fairly terrible quizzes. Last year, there was a sort of an author quiz and a picture round, which I may have slightly dominated. This year, none of that. There was just a raffle, and everyone who attended had one ticket that they got with their lanyard. So everyone had an even chance of winning. I think there were 8 different prizes. And even I won something. I never win anything.
Some really cool prizes as well. So they give away. Did they give away a copy of Spear of the Emperor?
Spear of the Emperor and the War Master.
So you expect that, I think. And don't get me wrong, that's still super cool. But that's kind of expected. Gave away some artwork, and then Neil did some artwork specifically to give away.
Neil and Johan. So Neil drew the Emperor from Horace's perspective, and then Johan drew Gotrek. So a couple of people will have gone away with signed, framed copies of artwork specifically created at the Weekender.
Yeah, unique.
I imagine they're very, very happy with those.
Absolutely, yeah, super cool, and that's good to see. It's also it's a way of getting everyone kind of, there's something to win here.
Yeah.
Right, come and join in, come and be in this room.
The only problem was, as that was taking place, 4 authors, so Aaron, Phil Kelly, Guy, and Gav, were playing Warhammer, playing Age of Sigmar in the bar. So I think a good few people who should have won prizes didn't, because they were too busy elsewhere, potentially watching the epic battle. But good on them for putting that on. I think it was a nice little unexpected extra in the bar.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really cool. I turned up just after they started playing, and you lot went off to get your raffle prizes and stuff. And again, the atmosphere that I felt walking in was, as good as any other Black Library weekender I've been to. Everyone in good spirits, authors there mixing in, chatting. Good to see, Graham had come back over for this one. Oh, yeah. David had come over again, David Annadale, but to have the regulars there as well. And that mixing in the bar, not only with good friends, because my missus came with me, so it was me and her sat on there talking to you guys and a number of other people, Kenny over from America, and then me leaving my missus with you guys to go and meet people who I hadn't seen for a year, and all that kind of stuff. It's fantastic. It's great, and that's what makes the Weekender what it is.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, my instinct is that it was quieter this year than last year. Not as many people, but the atmosphere in the bar and just around and about was brilliant. And like I say, the Saturday night was so much fun. I had fabulous chats with so many of the authors, some of the actors. So Steve and David, just joys to hang out with. I had a really nice chat all through the weekend with an author who wasn't there on the timetable, on the schedule, who was just coming to sort of hang out as a fan as much as anything. I think a guy called Alec Worley, who's written some really great some really good Sisters of Battle short stories so far. He's got a horror audio drama coming out next year. And he's written for all sorts of things outside of BL. I read some great Judge Anderson novellas by him last year. But he was just an absolutely lovely bloke, and just come and hang out with us and just chat the stuff that we all love.
Yeah.
And I think if you've not been to a Weekender before, seminars are amazing. The chance to buy stuff, get things signed, brilliant. really, the thing that sells it to me is that sense of camaraderie and community and the people you meet. Now, I've got a group of friends in London who we do a gaming group that have all met via the Weekender. And there are people that I've met every single Weekender who I don't live anywhere near, but will always make a point of going and hanging out every time we catch up at one of these events. And it's just the chance to meet people that love this stuff as much as you do, that probably most of us don't get outside of that sort of event.
Yeah, it's like anything where you get this whenever you get people of a like mind in a group. You almost have to remember when you leave that you're not in that environment anymore.
No, I was very sad
that you can do that, and it is good. They did the coffee clatch type meeting thing again this year on the Sunday morning. Interesting to hear that kind of went roughly the same as it did the last time they did it, in that as a bit of an awkwardness at the start, and maybe a few of the people who are there by themselves who are less confident.
I think there is still a question mark around how do you encourage people who are travelling on their own to join in?
Sure.
Not to join, to feel comfortable and enabled to join in these cafe clutch environments. So a bunch of tables, people just sitting around chatting. I think the only improvement on that is almost coaching the authors in advance of what to do.
Yeah.
And like a lot of authors, I'm sure, are quite introverted people themselves, so probably don't find this comfortable naturally. But helping them, I certainly spoke to a couple of authors at the start who were just sort of standing around going, don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. So a little bit more management around expectations, and really a couple of people from BL or Games Workshop who are positive, extroverted characters to just organise it and keep things moving and be like, come on guys, get in, don't stand in the doorway, you're all standing up over there, go sit down.
Also to wander around the tables to see, because inevitably you're going to have one of those tables is going to have one person who's sort of trying to dominate, and not all the authors will deal with that in as well as other authors. So to be able to walk around and maybe kind of step in a subtle way and expand that. I think one way they can make it easier for people to join in is almost to have on the table to have questions already on cards, and not just questions for the author, but like kind of go around the table, quickly give us like your favourite novel, that kind of thing. They're cheesy. Icebreakers are cheesy, but they're used because they work.
Yeah, I think the trick is getting a balance, and also everything you add in requires additional administration and management. It was great. I really enjoyed it. But it was a touch disorganized, especially at the start. But
I mean, at the end of the day, if Dan sits down at a table, he probably doesn't need that. But if another author's at a table and the people around the table are all a bit expectant, just to have something there that you can then, there's this thing here. Okay, right. Well, this, gives us a starting point. Yeah, potentially. But yeah,
but I'm sure it's doable. I think it's a valuable part of the day of the weekend, and I hope they continue it for future events. But little tweaks would make it perfect, I think.
Absolutely. Awesome. Anything else before we leave the Weekender?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a ton of stuff we could cover. I've got a roundup on Track of Words, so you can go and have a read of that. I've got a roundup as of today as we record of all the new upcoming releases that we've talked about, along with a bunch of stuff I've found from elsewhere. So we've not covered half of the things that are coming out. Warhammer Horror, some amazing stuff for 40k and Age of Sigmar. But that's all available online.
I do want to cover one thing.
Oh, okay, fire away.
We know we've got the kids' books coming up, and we just found out that we're getting audio versions. The 40k ones being done by David Tennant, and the Age of Sigmar ones being done by Billy Piper, who played Rose in Doctor Who. Some people in foreign parts may not be quite as aware of those people. But essentially, you've got mainstream actors on top of Catherine Tate doing
Greyfax.
Greyfax, yes, and Brian Blessed doing Gotrek. though they are within England, those 4 people are proper famous. Like,
proper famous.
Proper famous. Catherine Tate's written her own shows, performed them, so been in Doctor Who and everything else. Billie Piper was a pop star before she was an actress in some serious acting as well. Only David Tennant needs no introduction, really.
Not really.
And Brian Blessed's Brian Blessed. That's a whole different story. Really interesting to see. Some of the kickback to that announcement was disbelief and incredulity. The fact that David Tennant would have anything to do with Warhammer. Yeah, but I feel it's a real strong show of not just the strength of the content, because I'm fairly sure that, you know, these people are going to turn away stuff that they think, or their people are going to turn away stuff, certainly, that they think's, you know, not worthy to a point. We're not talking about the people who just say yes to everything. It's not Samuel L. Jackson doing films where, you know, I don't know if he ever says no, bless him. But these people are, you know, respected people, and there's got to be, you know, Black Library got to be doing something right to get them, but also it's a real strength of the brand and the mainstreaming of the brand.
Couldn't agree more. I think these are such positive steps we're seeing, and they really reflect, yes, the perception of the brand, but also the confidence that BL have, being able to go, we can go out and get Brian Blessed now. We can get David Tennant. So goodness knows what's going to happen next.
I mean, we should probably mention as well, like Cavan Scott who's doing the 40k book, I think.
Yep.
Yes. You know, he's got a decent name in that area. It's not like he's a newbie or anything. So
both of them. Tom Huddleston is doing Age of Sigmar.
That's right. Yeah.
These are established authors in comics, in young adult, and just younger reader writing. These are good shouts.
Yeah, and that's great for Games Workshop as a whole. It's not just Black Library. This is, and we've seen the way that Games Workshop are pushing their product as well. We know that they were advertising for a job for someone basically to try and get TV shows of some kind made.
Yep.
Certainly on, you know, a visual medium. This is probably the start of the branding that GW should have been doing 20 years ago. You know, the Space Marine. The silhouette of the Space Marine, or you know, the flat picture of the Space Marine should be worldwide. Should be as famous as Hello Kitty or what have you. And we could be seeing that, and that's only good for us as gamers.
I think so.
It'd be interesting to see as it grows how it affects things going on. But for Black Library, as I say, just the knowledge that, and it's not, and it's weird because you know, there are brilliant actors, voice actors out there who aren't David Tennant, who haven't got that name, and we heard some of them on that weekend. But the fact you're getting, you know, Shakespearean actors of Brian Blessed and David Tennant to do this is a big step.
Couldn't agree more. And I mean, if you've listened to Realm Slayer, especially if you've listened to the sort of bonus features and the interviews, there's a real sense that all the rest of the actors were really pleased to get to work with someone like Brian, and raise their game. I mean, these actors are damn good. So having someone who is, you know, a film and TV actor is what it's really going to do is it's going to inject new vitality in. It's going to give us something that we've not heard before, and that's a positive in every respect. I think it's not like you're going, oh well, you know, you're taking work away from someone.
Yeah. Well, there's generally a reason why these people, you know, cream generally rises to the top. That's not always true with TV. Let's be fair with that. But David Tennant, you know, is a name that you know, demands respect. You know, he has that star quality, and Brian Blessed has that. They bring, and in fact, listening to those interviews, as you said, they bring something else.
Yeah.
And other people are like, you know, I learn off this guy. So yeah, definitely that's going to improve everything within that as well. You know, it's going to make the product better. So it's great to see.
It certainly is. I can't wait to see what we get next. So I think these longer format audios will be the thing of the future. Realm Slayer is brilliant. The chance to have 4 hours of content, get such a sort of solid story, so much content in there, it's really quite different to the standard audios. And while I wouldn't necessarily want to listen to those all the time, it was really powerful. I can't wait for Our Martyred Lady. And I just think it demonstrates the fact that BL are thinking outside the box. They're trying different things. We're getting shorter audios. We're getting longer audios. We're getting new people coming in. Even within the cast, the regular cast, there are new names that I'm hearing now cropping up multiple times I hadn't heard of even just a few months ago. So I feel like there's a lot of stuff coming. And if you're not an audio fan, that's fine. But there's a lot of stuff that's you're only going to get the best out of in the audio medium, so it's definitely worth exploring.
Also, as well, I'm not up to date. A quick Google will show me there are people putting out audio dramas around, I'm sure. But apart from the BBC, like, who's putting out a lot of quality audio dramas?
It's probably still Big Finish, who were the name in it. But beyond them and the BBC, I doubt there's anyone other than Black Library.
Well, I did find one.
To the same scale.
But yeah, absolutely. To the scale and to receive kind of the reception it's getting. It's really interesting to see that, Black Library, we've always said they've pushed lots of different things. They've tried a lot of stuff out. For a publishing company, they're quite adventurous. And it's paying off, which is good.
Yep, totally. I can't wait.
Awesome. I think we'll leave it there then.
Yeah, we've talked plenty.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us again.
Pleasure, as always.
And we'll speak to you again soon.
Lovely. Cheers.